Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining. Cecilia here, and today I'm going to share with you how to paint a cherry blossom tree. I'm currently working on a new painting that you can see here in the background with some floating islands. I'm not sure how this will turn out, but I was really inspired by all these beautiful colors that occur during springtime, all these beautiful flowers and plants and trees and sunsets and sunrises. Yeah, it's a really wonderful and inspiring time. That's why I wanted to create a cherry blossom tree right here in the foreground. And yeah, I thought it would be nice to paint that with you. I already did an acrylic underpainting. I always do that because I think it's easier that way to just roughly define the colors and shape of the objects. So you can do that as well, or you can start right away with oils. And the oil paints that I use are these water mixable oil colors from Winsor and U10. I highly recommend them. They're super easy and fun to paint with. You don't need any additional solvent, just water. And yeah, they are great, especially when you transition from painting with acrylics. So the colors that we need are ivory black, permanent rose, titanium white, and raw umber. And the brushes that we need are a filbert brush, a round brush, a flat brush, and a tiny little brush for the details. And it's good to have them in different sizes. So yeah, I would say let's dive right into it. We don't need that much paint, just a little bit of each color. We start with mixing the two colors of the blossoms. We mix white with permanent rose and add a little bit of raw umber to it, and also black to desaturate it. If you want to paint a really pink and vibrant tree, you don't have to add black and raw umber, but I like to diminish the saturation a bit. So this is gonna be our shadow color. Now we mix a brighter one for the light areas. We use the same colors as before, but we add much more white to it and less black and raw umber. Also, I forgot to mention that I add a tiny little bit of cadmium yellow to the lighter color in order to make it warmer. I really like warm colors, and if I add only white, the color seems colder. With this first layer in oils, we just define the core structure within the tree. We start with the shadow color of the blossoms and a filbert brush and paint dark spots all across the tree, and in this way we work out the rough shape of the foliage. Here I think it's helpful to have an acrylic underlayer because I follow the branches, and in this way I already know how to place the colors. After that, we use the bright color and paint right above the dark areas, because the shadow parts are below, right? And at the same time, we blend the light and dark rose color. You can see there's a structure evolving, and basically I follow that. I see different formations of the blossoms and stick with that. We do that as long as we like this rough structure, and then we use the same bright color again, add separately a little bit more white and highlight the outer edges. In this way the structure of the foliage emerges even more. Here you have to pay attention to where the light is coming from. In this painting the sun is shining from the right side, that's why the right side of the tree is brighter than the left side. Afterwards, we mix the colors for the tree trunk and the branches. Again, we need a shadow and light color. For the shadow color, we mix raw umber and black. And for the light color, we mix raw umber, white, and a little bit of cadmium yellow, again to make it warmer. As I previously said, here the light is coming from the right side. We keep that in mind while painting the tree trunk, so the left side is primarily dark and the right side bright. We start with the shadow color and paint the whole left side of the trunk and the branches dark, also the roots. Besides that, I like to add an eye. I think that's a nice character and brings more interesting details to the tree. For that, we just paint a dark circle and a dark point right in the middle. Then we use the brighter color and fill out the rest. Also, I wouldn't paint straight lines for the edges. The tree looks way more natural when the edges are irregular and uneven. After that, we use white and a little bit of the light color and highlight some areas, especially the edges of the right side, and also the eye, and just add some structure with single brush strokes here and there. Of course, we're going to add branches in the upper half, and you can see that some of them are still shining through, so I'll take them. But we paint only a few spots where we can see the branches, bigger and smaller ones. So I would say that looks pretty good for the first layer. Now we have to let it dry for like 1 or 2 days until the surface is dry to touch, and then we can move on with the second layer. I would cover up the paints with something in a way that nothing gets stuck in it. And yeah, in the meantime, I work on different parts of the painting or on other paintings. I like to switch from one painting to another depending on the colors or objects that I want to work with. So the surface is dry to touch. It dried for like 2 days, and now we can move on with the second layer. We use the same colors as before and also the same brushes, but make sure that you have some tiny brushes as well, because now we will go into details. This layer is really about amplifying the contrasts, like dark light, cold warm, blurred sharp, big small, and so on. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. This time we use a round brush, roughly the size 5, and pick the dark shadow color with which we create a spotted pattern in the shadow areas. Then we fill out the rest in the shadow areas and paint some dots in the light areas above with a mid-tone color, like the color in between the dark and light color. With the bright rose color, we paint the light areas above the shadow parts, again by using the same method. You can see in this way we have a more detailed structure within the foliage, and these dots look like blossoms. And now we use white and highlight the very edges. I would also look that the dots merge nicely in the middle, so you have some lighter spots in the lower half and some darker in the upper half. In this way, it doesn't look like a straight separate line in the middle of the dark and light area. We always want to blend them nicely, but simultaneously make a clear difference between them in order to enhance the contrast. I hope that makes sense, otherwise leave a comment down below. So we use this method for the whole tree. It's repetitive, so I will go over this step a bit faster. If you want to have an overall unified appearance, then it's important that you blend the dots a bit, but at the same time you can identify them as single dots. In this way they don't have a sharp border. And again, the highlights are mostly the edges on the right side. Also, I like to add a few darker spots in the shadow areas to intensify the contrast. For that we take a bit of the shadow color and add a little bit more permanent rose, black and raw umber. So I think that looks pretty good. You can see that we have this rough structure, like different sections in which there's a group of these spotted dots that represent the blossoms. But I like to go even more into details. This step that we're about to do now takes more time, but I think it is really worth it because with the details the tree really becomes alive and interesting, right? For that we pick a really tiny brush, here I used a size 2, and we grab white to paint little petals and blossoms in the light areas, because you find the greatest details in those areas which are lit up the most. Also I use a wooden stick to support my hand, and I put it onto the easel, not the canvas, in order to not create a bump in the canvas. That's also the reason why I don't put my hand onto the canvas itself. The spots that we painted before are the foundation. So as I said, every dot is a blossom or a multiple, and we basically just paint with little strokes the individual petals. Sometimes I paint a typical flower with 5 petals, and sometimes just 2 or 3 petals, or only 1, as if the blossom is closed or kinda in a different angle. And yeah, don't think about that step too much. We paint randomly flowers and petals here and there, not in a specific order, so that it looks more realistic. And yeah, we do that approach for all the other light areas as well. Again, they are always the upper part of each section on the right side. This takes a little bit of time, so that's why I speed it up. Then for the left side we use a bright rose color, not pure white, to paint the petals because in this area is more shadow, so the light parts aren't that bright as the ones on the right side. In doing so we create a color gradient across the whole tree. Finally, we paint the details of the tree trunk. We use a small flat brush and paint over the dark parts with our shadow color. And with the brighter brown color, we paint over the rest. I would also paint the very edge of the left side in that color, just a small stripe. Even it's the shadow area, the trunk looks way more natural when there's sort of a rounding off towards the edge. After that, we use the same tiny brush and paint the highlights. For that we add more white and a bit of yellow to the light brown color. We highlight all the edges of the right side, including the roots and branches, and then add some strokes here and there in the middle to create this sparkly look. Of course, we paint a bit over the branches in the foliage and also make some highlight spots here and there. And with this tiny brush, we paint a few really thin branches, like this. If you paint it too far, just go over it with the rose color. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you. If so, give it a thumbs up and also let me know in the comments down below if you still have some questions regarding this topic. I wish you a wonderful day and until next time.